Here we are. It's another good time to talk about AI on the channel. Listen, most people have been using GPT-5 like they've always used ChatGPT, and that's probably a mistake. Things have changed a little bit. And I have to tell you, I've spent the last year doing some of the biggest AI deployments in business. And I can tell you that ChatGPT plays by a different set of rules. The things that they changed most recently with this release are probably impacting your results. So, tonight I'm going to share with you a little bit about how it works differently. And then I'm going to share my playbook for what you can do to get better, accurate, and hopefully more actionable results as you're using GPT-5 in ChatGPT. As always, it's a good time to talk about the mistakes that you and I make and the mistakes that everyone makes with AI. And tonight is no different. So let's jump in. We're going to talk about how we can avoid those GPT-5 mistakes. I got some great tips to share with you today. And look, the truth is, it doesn't stop. OpenAI is doing a lot of work to continue improving the model. They're getting better at promoting what they're sharing. They're telling us how great it is. They're telling us how much it has improved. In fact, I don't know about you, but I was certainly expecting some very big changes with this ChatGPT 5 release. The way that it was talked about, the way that Sam was promoting it, how great it was, and how much of an improvement it was for the things that we do. And if you were disappointed, you're probably not alone because there's been a lot of talk about what exactly happened with the release of this model. The truth is, there are some real challenges that we've been through with the release of GPT-5, and not all of them are even about the model. When they did the release, there were some elements to that engineering that didn't go quite right. Let's have a little bit of fun with it, right? When we did the release, there was some element of them telling us that, hey, if you're not seeing the good results, maybe you're just not doing it the way that you need to do it because all of the model is improved. All of the influencers were out there telling us that they were getting these incredible results, and some of us just weren't. And in fact, if you've been on social media, you've probably seen some of the details that have been shared. Some of those examples include counting the number of R's in strawberry and blueberry. And yes, that is still a thing. Isn't that funny? Here we are, we're continuing to make all of these advances, and things still aren't necessarily getting better. And what can we do about it? I think some of it is to start asking the right questions. Now, I don't know what kind of questions you're out there asking, but when I see the empty prompt box on ChatGPT, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this thing? If you stop the video right here, at least go and ask ChatGPT about ChatGPT. Give me 5 prompting tips, right? Because maybe you'll get better results that way. Now, I'm not going to cover the results of what it says for the prompt, but it does give me some fairly decent responses. So that's not a total waste of time. And I want you to know that there are a number of ways that we can leverage even what ChatGPT knows about ChatGPT. So keep that in mind as we go. But I'm going to give you some real practical tips here because we all want to do a little bit better. So having those best practices and learning what we can is really important. I think the very first thing we need to start with is something that really hasn't changed with ChatGPT 5. And that is it gives you an answer that looks great. But if you take that output and you don't check it and you just take the word of ChatGPT, you're probably going to regret it. It's funny because it was not more than 2 weeks ago that there was actually a real legal ruling where a lawyer had the consequences of having cited things that came out of ChatGPT that were totally hallucinated. They were made up. This gentleman put his career on the line by using what came out of ChatGPT and not verifying it. Don't make that mistake. Understand that it might look right and still not be right. And some of the big brains in AI have told us, look, we don't think that hallucinations can be completely eliminated. That might be a part of how all of this works. And so we need to be operating under the assumption that you might want to trust it, but you need to verify those results. And as we get into that, we need to talk a little bit about what has changed in GPT-5. The very first thing I need you to know, this new routing concept that they've introduced with GPT-5 is really important. And what I mean when I say this new router concept is that one of the techniques that OpenAI have used with this model is they're actually routing to a mixture of models. One of the advancements over the last 18 months was this idea of a mixture of models that was actually behind the scenes, and it would give you these answers. And as their, mixture of experts. Now we're into mixture of models, where what OpenAI has done is they've actually taken the capabilities of all of those collections of models that they have, GPT-4o, o1, o3, o3 mini, and on. They've got a whole collection of them that they took away as they released GPT-5. And now it's actually looking at what you are asking for, and it's making a decision. And it's thinking about where it could send that query to get the fastest answer, or an answer that is good enough based on your prompt. And so what does that mean for us? It means we need to start thinking about what it is that we're asking. And so I'm going to share with you some detailed tips on exactly how to get those better results. Now, what they're telling us is that it's better at reasoning. And I can tell you that even though I no longer have access to GPT 4.5, the answers that you can get are really great. The models that they have developed over time have been absolutely tremendous. And they've added that reasoning capability on top of the GPT 4.5 capability. So it's a good model that then adds reasoning. But again, you have to be aware that it might look correct, but not be correct. And it's on you to validate that that's the case. Now, one of the other things that you need to understand is they have told us straight up that if you give more structure, you're going to get better results. We need to think about how we're structuring our query. It depends on your use case and how you are using the technology. Most of the time for me, I want the thinking model because I'm trying to do some more advanced things. These are things that I want to consider deeply and really get into. And the fact of the matter is, your experiences are going to vary. Some things really are better, but not everything. So specifically, what's maybe not better? Very first, I just need to share with you, this is one I'm actually excited about. Fewer unnecessary emojis. That's an annoyance for me. I'm not a super emoji guy. I don't want all that in my outputs. So I was actually pleased to see this. And we've talked about all of the problems that we've had in the past about telling someone that they're right and that they're great. So it being less effusively agreeable, I think, is also a positive change. But with this new architecture, this unified system, you might need to choose to work harder on the question. And there are some specific things that we can do. One of those is to choose the GPT-5 thinking model. If you're working on a hard problem, choose GPT-5 thinking. It's going to do that additional work. But if you put it in auto mode, there are actually a couple of things that you can do to explicitly tell the model, hey, I want you to do a little more work here. And they've told us exactly what those phrases are. So I'm going to share those with you in just a moment. But before we get there, you need to understand that because of this routing model, your answer can change. You may ask the same prompt and get slightly different results because it's routing it on the back end. So you might get GPT-5 main for one of those answers, and you might get the mini model also. It also depends on how busy ChatGPT is at the moment. It also is going to matter if you are a Pro, Plus, or free user. If you are a free user, it is going to be a lot more likely that you're not going to get that main model. So you need to be aware that that could happen. If you're on that free SKU, there are advantages to being a paid user. I'm going to continue to be a paid user. I will be honest and say that if you're doing just standard things, the free is probably quite good enough. And in most cases, it doesn't matter. But it's going to decide when you submit that query using its chain of thought capabilities and the embedded prompt chaining to determine, hey, what do I need to work on here? And so we need to seed it with some additional insights and tell it what we want to do. All right, now let's talk specifically about the models. And this comes directly from OpenAI. So be aware that this is what they're telling us in terms of what they've given us for the current status. So if you are used to using GPT-4o, that is now GPT-5 main. And again, the thing I want to call out here is that this is both the improved capabilities and the thinking and reasoning that's a part of the routing setup. So it's thinking on multiple different levels in different ways as you submit that query. And if you're used to the GPT-4o mini model, we have a main mini model now for GPT-5. Now, most of the things that I was doing in ChatGPT were either O3 or GPT 4.5. I no longer have 4.5. That's no longer an option for me. So I am a little disappointed, if I'm honest, but I didn't use that all the time. That was usually a special use case that I was doing something particularly deep or thoughtful that I really wanted focused, deep thinking on. And I would only do that a few times a month. I was very open about how expensive running that 4.5 model has been for them. And so they have decided to make it only available to that highest level. You have to pay hundreds of dollars a month to get access to that. But they introduced O4 Mini that was an improvement in terms of speed, and that is the GPT-5 Thinking Mini model. Once you use that up, you get pushed to GPT-5 Thinking Mini. So you still get deeper thought, but it's going to be a mini model that is less compute intensive for them to run. And then, of course, there are the other two models, the GPT-4o Nano, that equivalates to GPT-5 Thinking Nano. So they have, again, a really small model that is doing that capability that they have made a part of GPT-5. Now, are they actually using these older models inside of GPT-5 because it is a mixture of models? That is entirely possible. And of course, the big deal model that you have to pay the high price for is the O3 Pro model. That is the GPT-5 Thinking Pro model. And I did notice something interesting today. I logged into ChatGPT and I was looking at the available models, and something interesting happened. OpenAI has a lot of costs to run all of this infrastructure. It is not an inconsiderable expense, and it is something that they have to pay attention to. I think that's one of the things that's really driving this evolution with GPT-5. But if you go and look at the menu, and again, I am currently a Plus user, so you see here I have the thinking, but the upgrade button for Pro actually takes you to an offer for business, which I find to be curious. Now, so that we're clear, it says $25 per month. I pay $20 a month for my Pro subscription, but the catch here is down here at the bottom where it says for 2+ users billed annually. Yes, that's right. You're buying 2 of them, so it's $50 a month, and you have to pay for the whole year when you decide to do that. So it's cheaper than going the multiple hundreds of dollars a month. Is that the solution for you to get to that higher level thinking? You do get some of those. So it is a cheaper way to get access to that, but you might consider just going through the API. And speaking of the API, as I'm going through the guide here and as we're talking about this, I do want you to know that we also have inside of OpenAI, if you get an OpenAI account and you can just log in, you get access to all of the APIs. If you're into development at all, there's a lot of resources here, but there is a GPT-5 prompting guide inside of cookbook.openai.com. So again, you don't have to take what I'm giving you as the final answer. there are additional resources out there, and I want you to be aware, full API documentation that is well. There's a lot of great resources that OpenAI is making available. So you're certainly not alone in figuring that out. But if you have any skills at all for doing development, you might want to look into the opportunities on how you can leverage those higher models, perhaps not without having to pay a subscription. Now, getting back to our model differences, we know now that there's the mini and there's the nano and there's the main. And what do those look like? One of the positive developments is we have a 400,000 token window. That is an improvement. We didn't have that before. It's gone up quite considerably. They're not in the lead. There are other models that have done far better than that. Gemini was the first to offer 1 million, and our folks at Anthropic continue to improve their windows as well. I think we're going to see more widening of that token window over time. But the other thing I want to point out before we leave the replacement model is that knowledge cutoff. Be aware that all of these GPT-5 models cut off from knowledge last year. So the only way you can get more recent results is to use that web search capability. Choosing to use web search will get you those most recent results. Not only do we have to consider, can we trust the answer from the web, but the model also has this hallucination thing that we have to deal with. Now, this is the non-browser version. So what we're talking about here is the pure answers from the model. We're not doing any web search. We're not getting results and answers out on the World Wide Web. We're just using the data that's in that model. And again, that's why the cutoff date matters. But if you look at some of these benchmarks, there's a couple of things to notice. What we saw with the O4 mini model was the highest number of hallucinations. That level of optimization really did bring in some pretty wild results in terms of relying on the trustworthiness of the details. One other thing I want to point out here is that GPT-5 main and GPT-5 Thinking and GPT-5 Thinking Mini are doing far better than where we were with O3, doing far better than where we were with O4 Mini, and even better than where we were with GPT-4o. But it is not perfect. It is not gone away. It is still a problem. And be aware that GPT-5 main had more hallucinations than 4o. So it depends on which model you are using still. Now, they're publishing these benchmarks, and they have said it is a dramatic improvement, 80% better, in fact, in terms of the amount of hallucinations we're seeing. And I applaud them for doing that work because that hallucination factor really does matter. The other thing we need to talk about here is it's fundamental to how things work. We may not ever be totally free of hallucinations. Yes, there are things we can do to reduce them. I just don't think we're going to see that AI makes mistakes at the bottom of the screen. For all of the organizations that are bringing this capability, there is the opportunity for that. And because we are a litigious society, there's the potential that somebody could read something that's in that summary and take it for gospel, and they make a bad decision. And that's still on you. Like, we are responsible for that. But with that said, they're taking action. And the reason why the hallucinations have gone down substantially in this new release is that there is now a reinforcement learning mechanism that is checking the answers for accuracy. I think this is a real positive improvement. Checking for that better answer and validating it is something that we can build into the models and behind the scenes. So I'm really glad to see that they're doing that. And it doesn't have to stop there. You can do checking too. You can ask it to check itself. And I'm going to show you some specific steps you can take. Here we have our compliance diagram. And this is, the reality is, anytime you have knowledge, somebody can come in and ask you for a bit of knowledge that could be dangerous. And all of this training for refusal is really about not giving out information that really shouldn't be given out and making it a little bit more difficult to get the information. In this case, they have added some things to make it more helpful, even if it's not giving you the complete answer. There's the straight refusal versus the how can I give some sort of indirect answer. And so they're sharing with us a little bit of the behind the scenes, the logic that they're using for that. They're trying to improve the mechanism. This is a really difficult challenge. There's not really an easy right answer. The truth is that if you try to hide knowledge, people are going to keep looking for it and it may not even matter. I think that it's like locks on your house, right? If somebody really wants to get in your house, they're going to find a way. But if you put the lock there, they might decide to go to the next house. And sometimes that's all it takes. So giving it a pathway for refusing is the whole goal behind this refusal framework. And there's tons of information in the documentation that OpenAI has released. If you want to understand more deeply exactly all of the model changes, go take a look at the model card, search for GPT-5 model card that is published. It's a PDF. It's very lengthy and very detailed, includes all of the benchmarks and the insights. And you might find that to be useful. If you're using this on a daily basis, that might actually be worth your time. But there's some of the other improvements that they made where you can actually connect more data. And what does that look like? In your settings for the model, what they've done for us is opened up a whole new set of options. So if I pop out of my description here and we take a look at our connectors, now we have not only GitHub, but we've got Box and Canva, all of the Google stuff. We've got Notion and Outlook and SharePoint and Teams. Should you connect to all of these things? That's really up to you, but you do have a little bit of control because you set the permissions and you can always disconnect it. So those options are there, and that's a new thing with GPT-5. So you might want to take advantage of that. I still use Gemini for most of the Google stuff because it's got integration with the calendar and the Gmail, and I can do all of my searching in there, and that just makes sense. But I could do it with ChatGPT now if I wanted to, and that's something I might consider. They have a help page that describes exactly what those connections entail and how they're going to use that information. So if that is something you want to know more about, click on that help dialog button to learn more about specifically what you can do there. All right, now to the real important line here. This is probably the most important line in the whole conversation tonight. If you need to force that additional reasoning, these are the statements you can make. Something as simple as think hard can trigger the model to do that extra level of work, pushing it all the way to the main model so you're getting that higher quality result. In the past, we've been able to say things like think step by step, and it's worked a little longer on the thinking. That still works. And then the third one they gave an example of was this is complex, so reason it out carefully before answering. And it will take more time to answer the question if you do this. So these do work. They have confirmed that it works. And this is without engaging GPT-5 thinking. You can say this and it will think harder with the main model. Obviously, your mileage may vary depending on your usage and how they may or may not be throttling you at the time, but you are going to get a better result when you say this than if you didn't. So if you compare the vanilla to the think hard, the answer should be different. Is that going to fix all of your problems and make it 100% accurate? Probably not. We need to take some additional actions. And so I'm going to share with you my framework. And this framework I've talked about here on the channel before, and it's been a part of the newsletter. If you're not signed up to the newsletter, go pick that up because I've got a tip sheet for using all of these great things out in the field, including prompts that I'm going to be putting out in this month's newsletter. So make sure you're signed up for that so you don't miss all of those great tips. But the mistakes framework is useful in a lot of different ways, and we can use it for our prompting methodology as well. And all we're going to do here is we're going to think through exactly how we're going to do this, and we're going to put some process to the way that we are using the tool. The very first step is to think about what it is that we're going to do. We're going to map, right? It means we're going to think about where we're going. We're going to think about where we are, and we're going to think about what's between here and there before we set off on our journey. So we're going to be more explicit, right? What is your role? What kind of expert are you going to need to traverse this territory? Where are you headed? Who are you taking with you? What is that audience, right? Who's this written for? Are you writing it for a business associate, writing it for yourself? Maybe you have a very specific goal that's in mind. Giving it that ancillary data, whether that's links or documents, notes, or even just your thinking process, can really affect what you're going to get in those results. Your inputs matter. And then there's some style constraints. You can tell it how long you want it to be. It's going to take all of that into consideration. And then, of course, last but not least is policy. How do you want it to approach the problem at large? Now, this last one is interesting because you can actually tell it, hey, I don't want you to take your first answer. But we're not done because there's more ways that we can think about what we're doing here. One of them is to include more investigation as you are executing that prompt. So, for example, you run the prompt, you get a result back. You can say, hey, chat, label your confidence level on those key points. Are you highly confident that that's the right answer? You can also ask it to verify the knowledge cutoff. We talked about if you're not using those web results, those dates matter because you may not be getting the most up to date information. So take that into consideration and ask. And then also make sure that you are identifying the assumptions that are being made before you accept those results. That means you are doing some amount of validation, whether it is checking the sources, whether it is running it through another job that is intent on checking those answers. One of the things I like the most about Gemini is that you actually have a hot button you can hit to say, hey, go back and check those results. That's built into the UI. And you can explicitly ask for that. You can say, hey, go back and check those results for me again. There is no harm in having the model work for it. It's a tool that's there to use it. And if it's important work, don't skip that step. Now, the other thing we talk about in building the prompt is we've had this concept of few shot prompting in the AI space for quite some time. And basically, what that means is that you're giving it some examples of what you want the output to look like. So if you know what you want it to look like, give it the example. Use placeholders. Give it a scaffolding to fill out with the results so you're getting the answer you want faster. And you can do that with an outline by giving it a sample, by taking that draft and saying, hey, I want to use this. Let's start with this tidbit and fill it in. There's all kinds of ways that you can structure it so that it's working on the parts that you want to focus on. Sometimes we think more clearly about one portion of a document than another. And if you're pretty clear on your thinking, maybe you say, you know what, I'm good, but I want to keep this in the output and it'll pass it through. It will likely do some amount of modifying to it. And you have to be aware of that, but you could ask it to specifically fill out those portions so that you're using it to help you where you need to help the most. Testing is where we are thinking about the way that we are using it. If it's a really important bit of work that you're doing, there is no harm in asking the question multiple different ways and running that query multiple different times. And if this is something you're going to repeat at all, that's really valuable. Try a few things and take notes on what it is that you're doing, because what you're doing is finding things that matter to those outputs. No one, not even an expert like me that's working on this technology every day, really knows the answer. That's part of the beauty of AI mistakes. You have to just try it out and see what mistakes come back. That's the good news and the bad news. But also, we also have to be realistic about this. All of these models take after what humans do. And if you come into the room and you ask me a question about something random, I'm going to give you the answer that pops into my head. I'm probably not going to pull out the phone and Google it first. And is that answer going to be 100% right? Possibly. If it's something I looked at recently, it's more likely to be 100% right. But let's be honest, right? Most of the time it's not, because there's some detail that you don't remember quite exactly right, and you get it 90% right. The answer is right enough for the person that asked you to do something useful with that. And I think that's where we are with these models. It doesn't have to be 100% correct for it to be really useful. Spend a little extra time doing some refining, find those details that matter to the prompt, and try it out. Do some testing. In the world of software development, testing is essential. And even though prompts and models drive non-deterministic answers, it doesn't mean the testing is not still really valuable. In fact, in some ways, it might be more important than ever. So try it out before you scale it up. That goes across the board. That's not new. And then when you do that, think about how you can adapt to what you are learning. If you're copying and pasting prompts, how did you think about those results? What worked for you? What did you notice? Don't count on ChatGPT for that because you're not going to remember to go back and look at that. But if you keep a clipboard of snippets that's handy, you're probably going to be able to find something really quickly that's useful. I have saved prompts over time and found multiple different ways to redeploy those prompts. And I didn't have to go all the way back to the chat history to find it. It's also still really not great to look back through that history. We have a search function now, but still sometimes it's hard to find things. So keep those notes for yourself. That's always a good idea. I think that note taking is really an underappreciated skill in a lot of different ways. So do that for yourself. And then when you're ready to actually get started, build that snippet library for those things that are recurring. Yes, you can put it into the model and ask it to do it. Take some notes to have it ready for you because you might decide tomorrow with a change that you're done with OpenAI. What are you going to do now? All that history's gone. If you haven't kept some snippets and notes for yourself, you're starting over from scratch. Don't do that to yourself. And you can also use the tool to generate some of those snippets as well. But just be aware that that is something you can do for yourself. And there are all sorts of tools and utilities that do that work. I built my own for Windows because I couldn't find what I wanted back in the day. But now that I'm using Apple, there's a pre-built one that I'm using more frequently that's working just fine. And even Windows has a built-in history that you can use with the clipboard. So there's lots of options out there. And then once you figure out what it is that you're going to do and you've validated it, you're sure that you're getting good results, you can use that in a reusable way and you begin automating things because there's actually a lot of automation opportunities we can do with AI. And I think that that's another thing to consider here because as we're thinking about the results that we're getting, we want to optimize, we want to be scoring. Is this working the right way? And one of those methods is SQE, where you're looking at the scope, you're looking at the quality, you're looking at the efforts, ensuring that you're getting the right results. And that's simply asking the model, hey, score this. You can actually ask it to score the response and give you a numeric evaluation of the output. Do you think this is a high quality output? What could we do to improve the quality by more than 2 points? And so the question then becomes, where do you start? You start with what you know, you evaluate it, and you can use the model to help you do that. That's the whole point of the scoring. And as you're looking at how long it takes, if you're doing API calls, there's a definite cost associated with that. And then there's the reliability. Are you getting the answers that you want? But be aware, it could change at any time. Even OpenAI changed GPT-4o multiple times. It was the same GPT-4o, but they changed it. They made it more likely to tell you that what you said was great, and that really wasn't great. They acknowledged that, and they changed the model. Sam again today said they're going to change the way the responses are. So be aware that things can drift behind the scenes, and that's why all of these additional things are important as you're evaluating what's going on. And as we get into the sustain, right now you're in the mode of using it all the time. Couple of key things to remember. It is still possible to overdo it on that context window. You might need to open an entirely new chat thread, seed the file and the prompt to get good results. So when weird things start to happen, be aware it could be that context window, that summary, that rolling over that's causing your problem. The other thing to think about is in taking those notes, not just the prompts, but also the what were you thinking as you did this? Because sometimes what we're thinking about when we do it is as important as the output. If you've already got a notepad there open on your system, just make some notes for yourself. Like, what was the goal here? What were we trying to achieve? Were we confident in what we did there? People forget that what you plug into these interfaces can be used for training purposes. If you are in the situation where you're trying to apply to jobs and you're constantly turning over that cover letter and the resume, You've probably got a name, email, and phone number at the top of that resume. That is in the model, and you're relying on OpenAI to clean that personally identifiable information out. There are ways that you can mitigate that. When I was doing it several years ago, I put some fake information in there, and I just had an easily replaceable string where I would replace my information so that my contact information didn't wind up in the model training. They are rolling more into the training set because there's a lot of opportunity there, and that is entirely on you. Now, for certain business agreements, if you upgrade to that business plan, there are some things that apply there where they're not going to train on your data set. So if that's a need you have, maybe that business account is worth the extra bucks. So consider that, but don't put yourself in a bad position, because you want to keep that private data protected, and that's really important. So with all of that said, we've made it through all of the mistakes. I have one bonus tip for you, and I found this to be extraordinarily useful. Aside from a more sophisticated automation, you can schedule items. Now, this feature has changed several times since they released it. And with the Chat GPT upgrade to GPT-5, I wasn't sure if my scheduled tasks were going to continue to work. So I went looking for it, and it's actually in the menu. But here's what's really curious, and I need to show this to you, because down here in the settings, we have a couple of different choices that we can look at. And if you pull up the settings menu, there's a schedule section here, but in the app, it says, go look at the dot menu to see about the future runs. But that's not there. It actually doesn't show up in my Windows app. There's nothing here about scheduling. It's not there. You actually have to go out to the website to see it. Now, it does show up, and all of the schedules are there. You can see exactly when they run. You can check on the scheduling of an individual job using that link. So if you pull up all of your chat sessions and you go to one of those items that's scheduled, you'll be able to see it. It shows up there. And here, let me put it on the screen here so you can see it. You can actually do it, and it's in your main menu here, and you can pause it, you can edit the schedule or delete the schedule or look at all of the schedules, but that will show you every scheduled item you have. And where this is really valuable is when you find something useful, you might want to go back and just have it run every day at a certain time. Or maybe it's a monthly thing. Maybe you need a reminder to pay the water bill. I wouldn't use ChatGPT for that as a recommendation, but you absolutely can. And there is real potential there to do something useful. You can have it remind you of something, or just brainstorming to get you thinking about what's going on. That's a really useful thing. And all you need to do is write out the prompt, right? Every day at such and such time, send me something, and it will put it on the schedule. That's how you use the scheduler. I think that's a pretty intuitive way to do it. It's really simple, and they fixed all of the problems with the time zone. It figured out that I'm in US Central, so it did it at US Central for me, so that it's also coming at exactly the time that I want it to come on. So with all of that said, that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. I hope you're finding that really useful. If you are still with me live, I'd love to hear from you in the chat, whatever platform you're on. Doing this live, we get a chance to connect with each other if you're out there. And what are your thoughts? Are you happy with the GPT-5 changes? Has this been a real problem for you? I will tell you that some things are not working like I want them to yet. I'm disappointed about the 4.5 decision, quite honestly, but there are other ways to solve that challenge. And there are also other providers that are putting out good work. One of the things that we've seen with this GPT-5 release is that Grok 4 Heavy is doing some pretty amazing things. So it also depends on where you spend your money. In fact, the truth is, oftentimes when I'm doing my prep work for the channel and the show, I'm using all of them. I'm using Gemini, I'm using ChatGPT, I'm using Perplexity, I'm using Grok, I'm using Llama, because it helps me think through what it is that I want to do. So don't miss the opportunity to leverage multiple models. I think that's one of the most powerful things that's come out of this competition environment that we're in, where OpenAI is being challenged, Anthropic is being challenged, Google is being challenged. They're all making each other better, and we get to benefit from those results. So some really good things are happening. And honestly, all of these tips that I've given you here, with the exception of the scheduler, apply to many different models. It's just that these are specifically tuned to the situation that we're in right now with GPT-5. So I wanted to get you these tips as quickly as I could. I hope you're finding that useful. I really appreciate you joining the program. Don't forget to sign up for that newsletter. Links in the comments. Let me hear from you as well. Let's build a community here and make each other better. And in the meantime, go make some AI mistakes. We'll see you later.